You right. Um, so yeah, for me, when I went to this conference, I had last year, I had no expectations. Um, so this is actually a slide of so Cecilia and I were asked to do a breakout session. So there are the way the conference works is there are this year 200 over 200 people, and then maybe 8 breakout sessions. So you might have some breakout sessions with like ours had like 30 people maybe, and you just kind of share and prepare for different topics. One of the topics was how to juggle family, kids, house church. One was on addictions. One was ours was on this was start journey, building a house church within ANF and partnering with our pastor and doing that. So it's like giving a perspective outside of New Life. But yeah, I had the expectations. It's kind of like one of those things where um, you go because Pastor Daniel asks you to go and uh, encourages shepherds to go. So, if I'm being honest, my spiritual life hasn't been all that healthy. Work has been really busy. I go to a lot of conferences for work, and so I don't like conferences generally. And this was another one, obviously different from my work ones, but um, I last year voted for or asked that it's like I heard that this conference might be once every 2 years, and when I heard okay, we're gonna have another conference the following year, I thought that was going to be the exception. And I think now hearing like there was a poll done at the end, and it will be every year. And being someone who preferred it being every 2 years, that's just always been that was kind of my attitude even for this one. Like, okay, I'll go, and I had to like change some things in my schedule, but it just wasn't convenient, right? But um, being around so many genuinely holy people, right? Like not every single person is holy, of course, but there are a lot of holy people, and it's good for me, right? And it rubs off on me, I think, in ways where it's not that I become holy, but Pastor Daniel has said before to me, just I want you to be close to me, right? And it's kind of like his message was also about being close to Jesus. Now, for him, closeness is not like everyone has a different level of closeness, but not way out there 3 meters away, but like 50 centimeters. So he used the metric system and saying 50 centimeters is pretty good. Some people might want it to be closer, but that's pretty good. So just being around people who were a lot holier than me, I think was good for me. And so yeah, I mean, if I am being honest, right, out of convenience, if I were to look at house church, it'd be awesome if house church was once a month or once every 2 weeks. And but you know, there were questions at the end of our session. We did a Q&A, and one of the questions was whether we did anything differently from New Life. And I said that really for the house church model, we do it to a T. Administratively, we might do some things differently, but as far as like the core fundamentals of house church ministry, right, that hasn't changed. Um, because it's not, if we're trying to follow the New Testament church, we don't do anything particularly differently from what's biblical, because even though it feels hardcore at times, when asked about, someone said, what about like, our church used to not have house church and had a good culture, and now people are grumbling about it because it's so different. And you know, um, they wouldn't meet every week, and they were great. Like they had a great culture, but um, the answer we gave was that meeting every week, it is best because there's consistency, and even if everyone doesn't attend every week or you don't get something amazing out of it every week, it still matters. And so yeah, for me personally, even if I'm not the healthiest I've ever been, and I don't know, right, like what's happening in my career or my life, and I'm just trying to stay afloat. Um, just like I know that what we did was I gave a testimony, and I think most of you know it. You don't, just ask Cecilia or someone else and they'll share it with you. But, I at one point left, or so I first started coming to this church before it was ANF, and my Korean isn't good, but I started coming here and I didn't know why exactly. So even though I felt like I didn't belong at times or wondered what I was even doing here, it was good for me, and it was what God wanted for me. When I first started coming here, it was a series of just saying yes to things without, just out of like simple obedience. And I didn't even think about it as obedience, but it was just more cultural reasons that I was saying yes. And then every week I would go to house church shepherded by Pastor Daniel and Sangha's Hamanim. And even though I was distant from God at that time, I knew there was something good that could come out of it. So it took me a long time to realize that specific good. But looking back over 10 years later in hindsight, it's very simple and easy. So I fought being a shepherd for a long time, even though it's something I grew up under and saw my parents doing for decades in Houston. Being a shepherd was, I realized, always part of God's plan for me. And even if I don't always do it well, I need to do it, not just to serve, not just to sacrifice or lead by example. More than all of these things, it's where I need to be and what I need to do in order to be obedient to God and to grow. And so it was out of obedience that I came to this church in the first place. It was out of obedience that I agreed to be a shepherd. So like Pastor Daniel shared in his sermon, and what Stephen said is true. Like it really, like of all the messages, actually it was the only message I've heard from start to finish because of work, but it was it was the best because you could tell by the audience and how they ate it up. And he kept telling people, if you want to hear more, come to ANF. So we might have a lot more people coming to ANF now. But yeah, like he said in his sermon, the most important act of motivation of being a shepherd is obedience. And there are many of you here, especially, so there are many of you here who, especially in this 9 a.m. service, who serve better than I do at this church. And Cecilia and I were sharing about ANF and how we've witnessed its organic growth throughout the years as we've tried to be a part of building this church. And one thing that keeps popping in the back of my mind is how fortunate and blessed we are to have many of you here specifically in this service. So, somehow, for some reason, God led you here, even when you first moved to Dallas and you were, trying to figure out what church to go to. There were times that I personally did my best not to encourage you to even come to this church, or tried to dissuade some of you because you were already believers and we wanted to reach out to VIPs. But thank God you came because our church would not be able to do what we're doing today to better reach out to VIPs without you. And so, but your job here is not done, and this isn't your ultimate destination or destiny. So, and if you go through, if you want to scroll through it real quick, so that timeline was kind of like how, we just gave a quick timeline of how we, and there's more to it, but for our testimony purposes, and then our church started before ANF, where we met, our family, our current house church. And so the 4 points that we shared through our testimonies were that obedience to God, restoration by God, loving one house church member and VIP at a time, and patience through difficulties. And then the last slide, you keep going, Tony. Keep going. Keep going. So that, having a faithful pastor is critical to building a church. And so for many of you here, right, I think, and you can put down the slides. So, yeah, the reason that you're here, guys, I'm closing. The reason that you guys are here is, only God knows, and somehow God led you to ANF, and just like He led me, He led all of us here. And so, yeah, I just kept thinking as we were preparing for our session two, how thankful we are, especially for people here in the Soundingham service, because, you all, are like the cream of the crop, and there's Stephen too, but you all are the cream of the crop of our church. So I think, but again, I think your job is not done, and this isn't your ultimate destination or your destiny. So more than ever, from this conference, I believe it is for our good. It is for your good, just like it was for my good, for you to become a shepherd one day. So I always thought that Pastor Daniel was joking when he said that everyone at ANF should become a shepherd. But they're not everyone, but really it is for our good and our benefit. And if each one of us does become a shepherd, that will mean that we have a lot more VIPs than we do today. There will be a lot more souls going to heaven than there are today. Also mean that you might be stretched more than you are today, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, even if it might feel like it at times. So rather than being one of the house church or one of the shepherds at the conference would always sign his name as at the end of every email to his pastor as eternal sheep, because he never wanted to be a shepherd. And so even rather than being an eternal sheep, it's there are the conference, I think, made clear to me that that little burning thought in the back of your mind about becoming a shepherd one day, bring that to the front of your mind and your heart. And just in case the Holy Spirit isn't very clear when I say that, there are some of you here who want to be shepherds at some point in your life. That's great, because you're not running away from that conviction. But I'm also really talking to those of you who might want to delay being a shepherd longer than God wants you to delay. And I'm mainly talking to you because that's what I did too. And just in case that's not clear either, I'm talking to like Nathan and Tommy. So just in case, I was debating what it is, but not just them, like a lot of you, Peter and Honey, and probably John, yeah, all of you, Andrea, Tim, and Alex. Wynn wants to be a shepherd, so she's okay. So I think this is just applicable to those of you also who, those of you who may even have lost your faith in here and not thinking about being a shepherd, right? And, if you've wandered in your faith or you don't have it, and I often feel like that, you too need to stretch yourself and come back to God. And I know I do. This relationship we have with him can honestly look lame from the outside. It can look burdensome. I get that completely, 100%. But it's not true. It's a blessing. It's a relationship that's eternal. It's worth it more than anything else you'll find in life because it's how he intended it to be.